All right. It is the 29th of February. You don't get one of those every year. And we are here for Gimbalabs Open Spaces, and we're picking up from where we left off yesterday. So I'm going to share screen for just a minute to situate us in this work. We get together here in this space every Wednesday and Thursday from 1430 to 1600 UTC. It's a 90-minute opportunity to get together. And for now, we're using the open space process where anybody can propose things to break out and work on. And what's kind of natural is that often there's something that people want to collaborate on that stays here in the main room. So yesterday, here's all the ideas we had to maybe talk about yesterday. Obviously, not all of this can fit into 90 minutes. So little by little, we know that we have these ideas and we know that we're going to keep creating these spaces to get together and get stuff done. I like this little addition. Thanks, Newman. Was this you adding this to the card right here? Oh, I think you're muted.
I think so. Which part? Which part? What did I add?
The main room and the breakout rooms here.
Yeah. I
That's
just
cool.
turned those into circles and made them big so that we can sort of stick them in there and yeah, as opposed to just a head.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thanks. So yeah, so what we usually start with, and we can start again today, is if you've got stuff you want to talk about, you can either drag down green cards from yesterday or create new ones today. And just like always, we're never going to get to everything in a single session, but this process is already creating an archive of the things we have either proposed talking about or actually gotten to talking about. And this creates a lot of really nice raw data about where we've been together and where we might go next. So I know, for example, I'd like to propose coming back to this proposal to use Notion that I shared yesterday. Um, and so I'll write consent to use Notion at Gimbalabs, for example. But is there anything else? Let's take just a minute if you want to grab a green card. Once again, these new ones, or drag one down. Let's take a minute just to get situated, and then we'll decide how to spend our time today.
How much time? Just 1 minute.
Yeah, thanks. There's my time.
Ah, perfect.
Okay, so that was a minute. I see Dandelion here. And by the way, in case anybody doesn't know this about Miro, you can add these little emojis to sticky notes. I just did that as an example right here to express my explosion of growing excitement, for example. But you can use those emojis. It's kind of a nice little proto governance mechanism. So if you ever want to express your delight or dissatisfaction about a green sticky that somebody adds, it's a fun little tool. So I see Dandelion here, and then over in community and onboarding, games, docs, onboarding activities. Anybody want to talk about these things?
I put them in just to be this sort of, yeah, like I would really like to get in on the project management stuff. A lot of that, for instance, the documentation and what was the one that I put? It's like it dovetails right into the project management software, meaning collecting all of these circles and stuff. And that's just, why not have a shared, meeting notes? And we put it here, but it's somehow not searchable. We talked about this yesterday about Miro not really satisfying the needs, etc.
Awesome. Yeah, and so if nobody objects and we can jump right in, is it okay if we use the main room to revisit this proposal for now? Okay.
Thumbs up for me.
Awesome, awesome. I will open this. I'm just going to have to switch applications. Notion works from a web browser, and they also have like a desktop application like Miro does. So I'm using the desktop app right here. Let's pull that up. And so I want to bring back a couple of notes. One, what Newman just mentioned about like documentation and project management. For me personally, that's why I'm proposing Notion. It's the best tool I've found that maximizes the ability to do project management and document writing all in one place. And as I've learned it over the last 6 months or so, that's the part that has made it a core part of how I organize my work. So that's kind of exciting. I also want to reiterate from yesterday a breakthrough point. Newman brought this up right away when I brought this proposal. The concept that, hey, it's a lot to ask of people in a meeting to try to understand a proposal right away and then give their consent or at least their absence of objections to it all in one meeting, right? So that's why I shared this for the first time yesterday, but we didn't even try to get consent on it because it wouldn't be appropriate. And what we're agreeing to do as a group moving forward is give stakeholders a little bit of lead time to read through and understand a proposal before we keep going. So those are two kind of high level things. Now that people have had a chance to think about what we talked about yesterday, maybe to reread the proposal on their own, let's jump into another round of clarifying questions. Okay, so we did a little bit of this yesterday, but our goal is first and foremost to make sure that everybody understands the proposal, whether you agree with it or not. Does this proposal make sense, what it's asking for? And if not, what questions do you have? Anybody got anything to share on that front? Steve.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like I don't have a Notion account, so I haven't signed up, and you have to sign up to be able to look at how they actually, like if we click on Notion Pro, that's what they want you to do before you find out how they do it. But, like how do you decide how many users to pay for? I mean, this is like an kind of a nebulous group. People come in and float out, and I'm curious how you envision that happening.
Yep.
Before I even start to think about answering that question, does anybody have similar questions? Because, like, for me, that's an example of something that even if we decide to use Notion, we got to talk about this question. Does anybody have similar
Yeah,
questions that would
I
need to
think
be?
I have one similar one. It's like, what is the criteria to be eligible to apply for one account? Like, do I have to take a commitment, let's say for one project, with the length greater than 3 months? This is some sort of examples, or do we have any other criteria for this? Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. And that's what I kind of get to, is just like, who, or like which circle or which person would admin that, and with the idea that, like admin to death or death by admin, but it does seem like it could lead, the principle of transparency. It's just like, okay, where, who would manage it, who would decide, where would you go to get it, et cetera, et cetera. That's just, I don't know if that's an objection or if it's like clarifying in the proposal. Maybe it's supposed to go in the proposal. Maybe the proposal is just, hey, let's do this, and then there'll be other sort of organizing documents around this part. But not, like I'm supportive. It's just these are pitfalls that might, yeah.
What else?
James, I'm just assuming, you've got money, from, what was it, like 4 Catalyst proposals. You got money from Intersect, and is this money from the stake pool rewards?
Yeah.
You're thinking?
Right here, this proposal is specifically proposing to use some of the Gimbal pool rewards.
Okay.
Okay, for now. But if that could be changed, right? Maybe somebody objects to this part right here and would rather see this proposal go through if the funds were coming from elsewhere, for example. That's a detail that we can look at and align on together before deciding to move forward with this.
I don't want to be a nerd about this, but like, price go up, it's some of this shit gets really elementary with multi-dollar ADA price. It's pretty easy to pay for.
Oh, here's a thought. And does it go into the proposal, or I do know that it's in the proposal mapping or proposal creation process. But the like responding to the primary driver. So I'm just going to read the primary driver that we came up with. And that is to provide open, replicable, safe spaces to learn, to explore, to empower individuals and organizations anywhere so that we can solve meaningful problems. I feel like we could look and see like how Notion accounts help, that is, in my mind, that empowers an individual, and it's very clear. Like this $10 a month will really empower people to solve meaningful problems because they'll have a shared document in our ecosystem. It's sort of a necessary step, and we're either asking people to pay that or we're providing it for them. And if they're volunteering their time, then we may volunteer our especially collectively earned rewards, meaning the rewards that we get from collectively putting our ADA in the stake pool. That's pretty cool.
Thanks for reminding us about the primary driver. Yeah, that's useful. Alex, what do you think?
I want to come back to Steven's question because I think it's the most important, and Hinson's as well. Because if we're talking about gimbal pool rewards and 20 guys, it's one thing. If we're talking about something different, it's another thing. And it's like, yeah, it's free stuff. Everybody loves free stuff, myself included. But Hinson's question actually points to the core, is like, but what's my what am I supposed to do for the free stuff, and what am I supposed to do for the free stuff connects to Steven's question about how much is there actually is a reward, right?
Yeah, I think it's tricky, you know, because you get into that, you get to that point. At a certain point there, then it's not an open and permissionless community, right? You know, like if really taking part means that you have to use these tools that cost money, but you have to do shit to get that stuff paid for, then it's not open and permissionless, and it's like it starts to become a job. And I'm not opposed to that. I'm just pointing out that that's that line that everybody in the Cardano community dances around. And some teams are just, you know, it's really easy for them to say, oh, no, you know, we want you, and, you know, you can come hang out with us, but, you know, we got no money for you. And that's fine. You know, you can say that, you know, and that's, you know, it's like, I think, you know, this is getting serious, right? There's more stuff happening. We have more collaborators. We have more things to build. And we have to start getting ready for that point where, like, yeah, we're glad you're here. We're going to go do this thing now, and you can't do it because you actually have to have paid for this shit. Or we have to have paid for it for you.
Mm-hmm. For a long time, I've found that, like, thinking about how commons are defined is really helpful. And so we have this concept of open permissionless systems, which is, you know, there's a lot of poetry we could write about open and permissionless systems. But in practice, I don't think there's a clear agreement on what it even means to create one of those. And as such, we can end up in places where, yeah, it's an amorphous group of people who never moves beyond the state of conversation, right? And so what does commons have to do with that? For me, the reason the concept of the commons is valuable, if you think about a field, right, with a fence around it, that fence delineates the field, but it also has a wide open gate in it. And the rules for walking through that gate are clear, easy to understand, but also non-negotiable. And they don't have to be much, right? The goal is not to create an inside and an outside where the insiders get a disproportionate amount of power. The goal is to delineate that, hey, here's the space where we're moving to that next stage, where we accomplish things together, okay? And anybody can join, but here's the short list of clear and understandable rules for joining, right? And commons have a value, right? Not because they are keeping people out, but because they are providing for space for the people inside to actually go to the places they want to go. And I think that's the key thing here for me. If we implement something that keeps people out unnecessarily, then we've done it wrong. But the current state is that, you know, maybe more real work could get done at Gimbalabs. And now we've got funds to do that real work. So how do we strike a balance? I think we can look to this concept of the commons. Anybody can enter, but here's the clear rules there are for entering.
And that is what I never saw in Cardano, actually. Like, never there are any clear rules. You have to guess, trial and error, and that causes frustration and being pissed off because like
Right.
it makes you feel like the system is rigged.
Yeah,
'Cause
we,
that's-
yeah, we don't want to just make more people confused. I think that's a great success metric for all of this, right? It should be obvious, and people should be able to say, yes, I'm in, or no, I'm not. And it should be very clear why they're deciding, yes, I'm in, or no, I'm not. Then we should help people make that decision.
So maybe it makes sense, for example, to have like admissions every other week.
Right? There might be some regular thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so like in a sec, insiders decide who is allowed to enter. So
Which
if
is
you're
yeah.
But you know, if you ever go to look at job postings at input output, which I haven't done for a long time, but I used to, you know, the prerequisites were they're going to give you a laptop, but you have to have fiber. You know, that's your problem. You know, and that's an interesting, you know, thing about this. You know, like we could take this same attitude. It's like, yeah, I've never had a Zoom account. I skate through all of this community stuff that happens by just using the free links and everything, but I've never had a Zoom account. Nobody's expected me to, you know, and I'm kind of thinking about that because of Newman's question in the chat. How do we manage the common tools? You know, on the one level, you know, you can say, hey, you're expected to have the common tools, you know, the paid accounts, you know, because we all have to do these things as part of our responsibilities to the commons, right? It's not just that there's a commons, it's that if you're part of the community, you have a responsibility or responsibilities to the commons. You know, like in the early conversations about the commons, is like, you know, everybody has to put in 2 hours work a day in support of the commons. You know, whatever that is, whether it's planting the weed or, you know, shoveling manure. Which that's how I think of admin work, but you know, that's just me. I'm sorry, I probably talked too much.
So,
I think,
oh, go ahead, Alex.
or actually, I was gonna.
Sorry, Ken.
Like if you're talking about the commons, there's different things. Like if you think of it as a limited shared resource, maybe the financial side of things is a limited shared resource for a group. But if you're talking about information, like a shared work on information, you could have different sources of the limited resources that are required for things. So like I'd sort of think about how do you compose the information together without having to interfere with the different groups. Maybe different groups have different ideas of how to guard the limited resource that they're sharing, but they want to come together in some organized way to be able to work on a project between groups. So like I'm as far as the whole Notion thing, I'm interested in looking at workflows and looking at how good the workflow is and how that could be optimized, maybe converting that into tools that don't have that barrier to entry later on.
I like that. And you know what that made me think of is the way this document is shared as a public link that anybody can read, right? Anybody here is able to read it without signing up for any accounts the way it was shared. And that's kind of a core feature of this particular software. And so by extension, you can see, and maybe this does relate to some of the common stuff, any circle or anybody contributing to any work stream or any project can publish any subset of documents anytime. What does this mean? This means that the information itself can be public, but that editing rights, that's the part that's inside the fence. And that's kind of interesting to me, right? So we're not locking anybody out from seeing information, but there is a barrier to entry if you want to contribute to that information or change it or be planning and be part of the project. I know that's Ken, that's not exactly what you were saying, but that's what you got me thinking about.
Yeah, that idea that Steve was talking about like getting by with just a free account, um, and then being able to do more, but just like, but it is part of like the admin. It's just like this is part of the work. It's like a real. I think that's what to me is. It's like we're asking people to do work, and it's not just reading or attending. Like I don't pay for a Zoom account to come here. But it is when I try to contribute and do a Zoom account, or to try to join, and then I'm kind of hobbled because I don't have access to that account. Like this is all really like access. I guess there's like an access protocol for the community, and in other communities we've like shared passwords or and it needs a level of admin. I guess that's sort of my thought. And it's interesting because now I'm thinking about all the other tools that make up a community, and the things that we use here are Discord, Miro board, Zoom. Are there any others? See, that I would like to delineate and have in some type of document, such that me as a participant, me as a contributor, me as a new person, me as somebody that's doing the governance, I can see and say, oh, look, these are all the things. Especially for onboarding, you can say, oh, right, these are the tools that they use. Maybe I'm not so familiar with Discord and I like Telegram. We don't use Telegram. Was that something that's like, oh, well, let's, like I believe in inside the fence, outside the fence. I do believe in the sort of the cellular membrane. I do think there needs to be borders, but those should be open and accessible and transparent, so that that you're going across a border. That you're in a different space. And that, yeah. And so that's those are some thoughts.
Yeah.
You want some blood to go through the blood-brain barrier, right?
Right.
And,
exactly.
I think what I've always found kind of irritating in the Cardano communities, the various ones, there's a lot of talk and a lot of information. There's a lot of sticky notes on these Moreau boards. And so like when you were talking about keeping this stuff organized and everything, it's like, in the retail businesses that I run, the admin work was the easiest thing, right? And when I would go to other colleagues' outlets, doing the same thing I was doing, and they just had a fucking mess everywhere. And I was like, come on, this slip of paper goes after the previous slip of paper, and then the next slip of paper goes after that one. It's all sequential. It's really easy. And it's easy for me to just hand that shit to my boss, whatever the hell he wants to see from the admin work, right? That's easy to organize. But this stuff of people endlessly talking and endlessly generating stuff to put on sticky notes, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to edit everybody's thoughts, and I don't want to, because I don't bother trying to remember them at all, let alone keep a folder full of them. I can't do that with my own thoughts. And that's what I find, and there's diamonds in that pile of stuff, these piles of thoughts and ideas. I mean, we do come up with good stuff in these conversations and on these sticky notes, but I don't ever feel qualified to edit them. So I don't want to be responsible for them. It's like it spins me off into tangents, and I don't know how, like TiVo does it, like kind of like automatically, and I just like marvel at that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's a big reason why I'm proposing this tool. Like Newman said, it would be nice if there was a document that had some, name any subset of information. I agree with that. And currently we don't have a place to even put that document.
mhm.
We have sticky notes all over Miro, but it's tough to synthesize and perpetuate grounded wisdom from Miro. TiVo's really good at it, but Miro's not built for that. It's built for ideating and getting started. And so I want to start really now answering these questions, okay? First of all, this question right here, and it's related to this one, right? How do we decide how many users to pay for and what is required to be eligible? When I bring this proposal to everybody, it's because I think creating a space where we have to confront these questions is one of the most important things we can do right now. Okay. And so I'm actually really trying to force the issue of having us address these questions. And in my mind, the place to start is to create a real there that people might want to get to, because we could philosophize about these points indefinitely. We could talk about these for the next 20 hours and maybe still feel that they're unresolved. But if you take on a project of really trying something, it grounds the conversation in reality. And the cost of screwing up is $10 per user per month.
Yes.
Or if we decide to go annually, it's $96 per user per year. That's a cost, but it's not a catastrophic cost. Now, another way to answer these questions, there's a much easier solution than trying to build a commons. It's to try to build a business. And if we were all just on the payroll of a startup, it would be easy to make these decisions. We would say we need some project management tools, and everybody who's inside this company gets one. But we're not doing that. Gimbalabs has always been a place to experiment with opting in and coming and going. And over the years, some people have decided to get real work done and some people haven't, right? We've all met people who have come and gone. We've all met people who have made serious contributions for some amount of time. And so everything that might be challenging about this is exactly the point. And we're very specifically not taking the easy route. Like Steve just said, right? Admin work is easy if you're inside the business. It's just what you've got to do. So people do it. They get it done because that's what the business needs, right? Gimbalabs admin work is invisible. It's been happening for long enough for Gimbalabs to survive, but it's not happening in the service of a business with a clear structure around it. And that's not an accident. That's because this is what the core proposal of Gimbalabs is. We need to experiment with other sorts of spaces like this because companies are great as far as they go, but they only take us so far. So by doing this, my intention is A, to upgrade our ability to move from conversations and sticky notes into actually established plans with more people contributing. And to figure out these hard problems, right? Because Intersect is trying to figure some things out, and we could talk about what's going well and what's not there, right? But there's a lot of work to do experimenting with how do you create these kinds of guidelines and spaces where people who want to get more substantial things done can, without going the easy route of just saying, oh, we're going to be a company, you're in, you're out. So what I'd like to propose to everybody is that the entire point of doing this is to give us a more tangible space to then answer these questions together. I have proposals for how to answer these questions as well, but before I even get to those, does that make sense? Does this proposal feel like it would create a useful space to then do the work of now figuring out innovative answers to these questions.
Yep, 100% for me. I'm looking for the reaction. I'm doing the thumbs up and then the hand clapping. Because it puts us in the space to answer these questions. And I'd love to hear from other folks. Are they resonating with that? Like Ken or Martin or Nelson? Yeah, Nelson's clapping. That's cool. Yeah, I think that is absolutely, because it grounds these issues, and it says, oh yeah, there's this thing about walking, like if you want to get over to one thing, you have to go all the way onto a left foot, you have to go all the way onto a right foot, and sometimes it doesn't make sense. The steps 3, 4, and 5 don't make sense until after you take step 2, so it's like there is like a sequence, and this feels like a low stakes thing, and then all these beautiful problems come up so that we can solve them. And guess what? Looking at our primary driver, once we solve them, they can be solved for others. Like becomes a replicable thing. And I think it starts with making a proposal. So now we have like a real thing, and you did it in Notion and not on a Miro board. Yeah.
I like that. That's nice, Newman. I like the way you said that.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Newman. Anybody else having thoughts right now?
Yeah. I usually don't have a lot of opinion about these things, and what you can talk a long time about it, but you learn the most by doing quickly and failing quickly and then moving to something else. That is my experience, also from engineering. But it's important that everybody's on board, of course.
I love it.
So we got 13 people here. There's usually maybe up to 15 people. So we just buy 15 accounts and then we're done. It's 1,500 a year, or I mean, it's
Awesome.
like easy, right?
Let's look at the rest of this, right? So circles, if we do use this, it will be available to all circles. And what I'm proposing is that the education circle, where is it, responsibilities? The education circle would set up what's called the team space. It doesn't matter if that word makes sense to you right now. You'll be in it. But the team space would have each of the circles we've defined, and circles can come and go, and those are easy to make or remove. Okay. So this would be available to any and all circles. But the idea is not to yet require use of Notion. Okay. The goal is to make it available as a tool. But personally, right now, I have no opinions about whether or not people must use this. I just want to find out if we do. And I want to find out if it makes it easier to align on incrementally larger scoped projects. Okay. Any thoughts about the circles bit or questions about that?
So I can see the community circle, the one that I'm focused on here, having access to that, and I'm curious, I'm curious. I know we'll figure it out, but like how that access is managed, etc. Yeah, but yeah, I as somebody that's sort of focused on the community circle, I would appreciate the use of a full Notion account in a team space with access to the tools that the other circles are using and the umbrella. Yeah.
I don't know what that meant.
Well, like as a somebody that's working in the education circle, like doing and contributing there, like making projects or doing initiatives, I would, yeah, I would use the Notion account. Yeah, it would, if it's made available, I would use it. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Is it easy to change names, or could you just do team member one and then swap people around?
Right.
Yeah.
That makes it easier, maybe.
Yeah. So an account would be associated with an email address.
Right.
Could it be associated with like the community, Gimbal Labs community one, at gimbalabs.com, or
It could be, but every time, so sharing accounts is actually creating work for people who need to administer that stuff.
right?
Okay, so part of also what I'm trying to accomplish here is by paying for accounts like organizations do, my goal is to take a little bit of the admin work off of my plate. Right. I'm the sole owner of a Zoom account that we use all the time here at Gimbal Labs. That creates work for me that takes up precious minutes every week. And if we had to share Notion accounts, all I would be doing is making more work for myself or other people who are willing to admin. And I would rather spend Gimbal Pool rewards so that that admin work can be taken off my plate. And it's easy to do if you pay money to a company for a service, right? Like we've created a lot of extra work by trying to save this money. And what I'm proposing is, based on my experience so far, I would love to not do that admin work anymore, but just to be able to share it because we're willing to spend a little money so that people can collaborate. Um, we can talk about whether we should start on the $10 per month per user basis, or whatever. This would be $8, right? So 20% less over the course of a year. And the story is kind of similar here. We could pilot this with a per user per month basis and add or remove people from the list of those that have accounts on a monthly basis. But once again, that's administrative work, right? So is it worth it to have the shorter term trial period, but to create administrative overhead? Or do we just say that once somebody gets one of these accounts, and we haven't decided yet on the method for getting one, right? But if we say that, well, once somebody does get one, they get it for a year. And at the end of that year, if we haven't seen them in 8 months, then we're not going to pay for their account again. That's an easy one, right? Like, so we can set up pretty simple rules for how you continue to get this account. That's another example of something that we could talk about indefinitely, but I think in practice, the needs are going to be pretty obvious, right? I think it's much easier to make a decision based on data than it is based on speculation. Okay. So yeah, I would advocate strongly to go this route. We still need to decide how people get this in the first place. We haven't done that yet. Okay. But once they do whatever we decide, they get it for a year. And then in a year, we decide if they get to keep it. Steve, what do you think?
I think that's great for the people that, have been showing up for these open spaces and governance things. And what I'm wondering is if maybe, in your purchase of the accounts that, a couple of them are generic and they can just be shared as people come in and out, and I'm going back to when we did our initial tokenomics stuff. There was that I can't remember his name now, the Spanish guy who was doing the frequent flyer mile kind of model to think about tokenomics, and like he would have been a good person to just give the generic account to, because he came in and he had ideas about this one topic, and then we haven't seen him since. And then we'd still have that generic account that he was using, and I can see that as we go forward through one technical challenge or one thing after another, that some people will come in and really work intensively with us for a short period of time.
Yeah. So, okay. So once again, generic accounts add administrative overhead. So I think the idea of generic accounts could be a future proposal. Suppose we take this on and we start using it, then anybody who's using it can create a proposal document like this one that says, we need 3 generic Notion accounts. And they can take charge of saying who would be responsible for getting that done, what are the resources required. I'm not willing to administer generic accounts. It's just not worth it to me. And if that buries this proposal, that's okay. But I'm not going to do that. Okay, so that would have to be a separate proposal. The good news is that any document, there's a share button up here. You can click it. You can go over to the publish piece right here. You can publish a document and you can turn on or off allow editing. And what does that mean? That means that if you want people without accounts to have the ability to contribute to a document or just to comment on it, this is how simple that is. So on a page-by-page basis, we can solve that problem. Whenever anybody with an account wants to share their work outside, share, publish, toggle these things on and off. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, I want to just lay out my dilemma and ask what you think. So for me, the dilemma is between like my fear of missing out, of putting the materials that I've been gathering, which are quite abundant for this point, to good use. And on the other side, my let's say, overhead in the sense of my self-respect and being not able to deliver in that case, right? So for me, it would be much more agreeable way to go is to have opportunity to ghostwrite for someone. So like you have an account, we like solve this on person-to-person basis, and then if there is some rewards, my work is not in vain. But at the same time, I don't feel like shit because somebody paid for me and I don't believe that work is worth paying for. So that's like, I have, like, that's my considerations. And what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think there's all sorts of ways that people will ultimately end up using this. And right, we can't account for if anybody, right, Alex, like you just said, or anybody else feels this way, if anybody is held back by guilt about these funds not being used well because they got an account, there's only so much that an organization can do about that. At a certain point, that's a personal thing, right? So if somebody would feel that way, like, oh my gosh, I feel terrible that I took this, then just don't ask for an account, right? And people can be creative as far as that goes. But I think there's only so much we can do at kind of the institutional level to protect for that.
Yeah, so like if I say no now, means the work that I have done will go to waste. And if I say yes now, and this work by chance goes to waste, on top of that, I feel like crap.
No, not true. No, if you say no now, it means you don't have a Notion account now. It says nothing to judge work to date, and it doesn't prevent you from getting an account when you want one in the future. I want to very, very strongly emphasize this. This proposal is about people getting Notion accounts. It's
but we just wait.
Yeah.
Like the tools that we use to transmit messages in any way, a proposal, a project management tool, constrain us in the realm of things that we are able to do. And by introducing this tool, you create a circle of people who use this tool and have a circle of like connection, and people who are outside of this tool and they don't have this connection. And to me, it's pretty obvious that if you're inside the circle, you are kind of more seriously involved and you're getting paid for your work, hopefully from the rewards pool. If not, then not. And that's like, I just don't have it in me to make the decision. I want that and I want that, but like, I'd rather say no, because just, you know.
Okay.
Okay.
You know, if I may, Alex, I want to tell you, based on my experience since 2020, that your concerns are kind of, you know, yours. You know, like James said, this is kind of a personal issue. You know, like I know from my experience, and I don't know how many places, Alex, people love your participation in the community, right? They really do. You bring value, and it may be inconsistent if, right? And this is the really personal part. If you compare yourself to others, you may see inconsistency, right? But nobody's comparing you to themselves, right? You know, like I would say, let go of worry, be fearless, and you do you, right? And like when you come into like a meeting like this and you've got a good idea, you know, and that document, you know, on the shared screen, you know, it's editable. You can come in and you can say and make the contribution that you have to make, and you will have done what you do. And that's what everybody appreciates about you. And so like, I really feel like, you know, just go with the flow and do you, and not worry about that, because you are valued.
Well, thank you for your kind words, but I didn't get what you said.
Yeah, so my point want to add is kind of similar, like as per the experience of us doing the Discord redesign. Probably in that particular team space, I'm the kind of sole owner in the Gimbalabs because this is a CDAN Labs team space. I'm kind of using it for organizing the Discord redesign, but it kind of just like this proposal right now, everyone could just go in regardless you have or have do not have an account for the Notion space. So I think it's kind of possible to be mitigated. Like in the future, I could still see there's a bunch of links, may it be Google Docs, Miro links, or the Notion links just throwing around the communities. But this is some sort of the experiment that we could take for some types of people. We might want to be a little bit more organized just in our own ways. Like because, for example, if I'm doing the Discord redesign, I'm more or less doing the project manager role. So me personally, I have to keep track of a lot of different things. But as the individual contributor point of view, I would say that it doesn't matter you contribute your idea in the Miro board, on the Notion page, or just on a GitHub Markdown. It's pretty much just identical, the experience. But for some particular subset of contributors inside the Gimbalabs, we might want to take some more structured initiative. For example, for me, I might follow up with the potential Fund 12 Gimbalabs proposal that we might want to submit it. And this is some sort of the organized where I want to have some centralized places, I would say, to gather idea, put down points, assigning different peoples to different stuff with some sort of deadlines, and also organizing some sort of the long form materials. Yeah. So in conclusion, I would say I couldn't see much harm because I will be kind of sure that not everyone will be going into the Notion space to just look into every details. All of us will just look into what interested us. Yeah. And we could just kind of engage as we used to be in Miroboard or other places as we like. Yeah.
Nelson.
Yeah, in the same vein, I would say that if we are going through this, and I'm going to say that I don't need a Notion Pro account right now. If Gimbalabs is starting to use Notion, I'm going to say that I'm not going to get an account right now, and I can take a look at how people are doing well or how people are performing with Notion. And maybe in 2 weeks, I might want one. And then evaluating on how people are using the Notion, how they're doing it. If I find a use case for me to use Notion there in 2 weeks, I'm going to ask for a Notion account with the reasons that I have. So in start, for even now, if we go through this, I'm not going to get a Notion account.
Yeah, 100% correct with this approach, because just without an account, you could also do a lot of things. Like with the page here, James is sharing. Without an account, you could also create a lot of different type of blocks, assigning tasks to different peoples. Basically, you just could perform most of the actions. But just until one point, let's say you want to take charge in some of the projects, you want to have multiple pages or database linked together to just help you to be more organized. That's the point you face the blockers. You exactly know what you're looking for, then you are in a better position for this account. So I think just getting a Notion account doesn't mean any sort of entitlement, like you are the more concrete contributors in Gimbalabs. That's the message that I get from James. Like we just want to utilize these tools to help us better organize our activities. So this is kind of Nelson, you bring up a pretty good point. Like maybe that's the best. If you're not sure whether you want to get a Notion account, probably until you face a blocker, then that is a good timing, I would say.
So what if that's the process? When you face a blocker, you ask for one. Could it be that simple?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's some good starting point to experiment, I'd say.
And that's navigation by tension, to call it out by the S3 name. It's just like when you get attention that's valid, more than $10 a month or more than the admin of dealing with like getting it from Gimbalabs, then you use it. It's sort of, and I feel like these tensions are real and would be valuable blockers, tensions to get rid of or to overcome with this proposal.
Beautiful. I was thinking about navigating by tension from the other side as well. So, right, the input side is, oh my gosh, I feel a tension. I can't contribute the way I want to because I don't have an account, so I need one. On the other side of that pipeline, if someone asks for an account and somebody else says, hey, what's so-and-so doing asking for an account? Well, that's a tension we can navigate by, right? And now we're no longer trying to imagine all of the edge cases that could possibly go wrong, which is exhausting. We're saying, hey, look, in this particular situation, it doesn't feel right that so-and-so got an account. Great, bring that up as attention. And we can figure out if there needs to be a response to that. That's how S3 is supposed to work. That's beautiful.
In the Gimbalabs drinking game, S3 drinking game, you have some water, or you'd move your body because you used a S3 term. You called out an S3 term, and so then you get a reward. This is just training, like what do they call it? Pavlovian Skinner behaviorism. We're just but yeah, I think that this is exactly what is going on here, is that like we're surfacing tensions. We're like, okay, what would happen? And we're kind of going around all the different cases, and and we're doing it in an open way, and we're moving through this process. So I'm really happy that we're having these discussions and that folks are here.
Yeah, I have several ex-wives who can testify that the Skinner method works.
Oh man. Oh man.
There's a lot more proposing coming our way. Okay, so on the one hand, we did just spend the last 3 hours of our time together deciding if we should subscribe to a web account, right? Which that's a long time to talk about whether or not we should just use this tool. But remember that what we are also accomplishing is we're starting to practice this process of proposals. And what's coming next, the reason we had to start with this is we need a place to make proposals to each other so that we can now make proposals to each other on how to use the additional funds that we have coming our way. We have a little bit more than 12,000 ADA in Gimbal pool rewards to spend on whatever people propose to spend it on. I'm proposing to spend a little bit of it on some Notion accounts, but that's not going to drain all 12,000 of those ADA. We have intersect funding coming our way for building some Dandelion functionality. And I have a proposal to bring to people who want to opt into it on how we use those funds and take Dandelion to its next step. I need a place to write that proposal. And Notion is the best place I know to write it. So that's part of why I'm bringing this as a prerequisite. And then we have some Catalyst Fund 11 funds coming our way. Same story. We're going to figure out how to use those. We know that they're going to go into a shared treasury. We know that Andamio gives us the ability to divide those funds up into projects. But what are those projects in the first place? We need a place to write them up and propose them to each other. So once again, I'm proposing this as a prerequisite to providing that space. So with all of that in mind, I had in mind something else I would like to maybe add to this. How does someone get a Gimbalabs Notion account? When they face a blocker, they can ask for one. I think that's a really good place to start. But still, what does it mean to ask for one, right? So, okay. So what does it mean to ask for a Notion account, right? And who decides that someone should or shouldn't get one, right? And so here's what I'd like to propose for that. I'd like to propose that the way you ask for a Notion account and the way that you give at least some other people, whoever's here, or we can decide on this later, right? Who decides is also a really hard problem. But in general, in order to make a good decision about whether someone should or shouldn't get an account, it would be nice to have some evidence to base this on. And we're not just saying, oh, I like you, but I don't like you, for example. Okay. And so there's two places this evidence could come from. One, we had Plutus PBL 2023. We have hundreds of people who minted learner tokens and who built a track record. That's just a prototype of what we're going to have moving forward, right? So it's possible for us to create a very brief onboarding course. It might be as short as the first module of PPBL 2023. Here, hook up a wallet and mint this token. There you go, you're done. Right? Just because we're creating a course doesn't mean it has to be more than a 30-minute course. See what I'm saying? And this is what we mean by commons. The rules to get in don't have to be arduous. They just have to exist so that people can very consciously opt in to something. So one way to think about who decides, right, is provide evidence via a learning experience, right? Delivered via a PBL course, for example. So that's one way to maybe do it. But maybe even more so than that, right? Like what could even clearer evidence be, right? Even the learning experience to approve that somebody completed a module in a PPBL course, well, we have to review evidence there anyway. So this doesn't really solve our problem. All this tells us is that we have an on-chain way to navigate this stuff, but we're still not talking about what the evidence is. So what I'd finally like to propose is, what if the process is, if I want a Notion account, I have to what do we call this person? The candidate. That person has to write a project proposal in the format shown above. Right? So imagine this. There's now a Gimbalabs Notion organization. To start, I mean, I'll be there. I need this. Hinson, I need you in there so we can collaborate on things we're already talking about, right? And if anybody else on this call raised their hand right now and say, hey, I need that too. I need to be in on this because of this thing we're already working on. To me, it's like, that's the easy part. Let's get started. If there's things you want to collaborate on, let's use this. This is going to help, okay? But now, what's at the gate of this commons, right? Once we have an account, keep in mind, any page can be shared publicly anytime. So with this method, we could publish as a template this document right here. And then if somebody says, hey, I don't have an account yet, I want one, what we would do is we would say, okay, hey, look, I'm just going to make a copy of this template for you. You could take it, fill that out as a proposal. And that's the gatekeeper. You have to make a proposal and maybe bring it back to maybe even not the whole group. A subcircle could do. We have these 5 circles, right? And if you bring a project that a circle sees as worth doing, now you've shown that you're bringing an idea that requires this project management tool. All right, let's bring you in to the Notion account so that you can facilitate the work you're proposing to actually get done. Okay. What's the gatekeeper? Hey, I realize that I need one. I'm facing a blocker, so I need that account. Okay, how are you going to prove that you're facing a blocker? Propose to us the thing you want to work on. And once you do, somebody looks at that and says, yep, that is worth doing. Let's give you an account. How would that sound to people?
Seems like I'm going to write a proposal very soon.
I thought you said you were staying out.
I said I was staying out for the starting,
No.
not forever.
Yeah, it reminds me of like carts and horses. It's just like, yeah, you know, it's just like, it seems like it's in the proper order. as opposed to like us trying to figure out who wants one, or just, it's just like, oh yeah, if you're going to build a house, then you need some tools. If you're going to build a project with Gimbalabs, you're going to need some tools. And honestly, it could extend to other tools like Zoom or Miro board, like full Miro access. Because right now, I can't, as a community circle, create my own board that gives me access to all the special sauce. Same with Zoom. I can join a room that's already been established, but who's the host? Can I use all the apps? Can I do all this sort of stuff? So as a winning project proposer, or a proposal that gets recognized and says, yes, we want to do that, then you just put it in the proposal, and you just know that there are these accounts available, or that this is a feature of Gimbalabs that you can like come and bring your project. And all of us have projects. That's the whole idea of the project-based learning. Chris is going through the PBL. Even if it's just a PBL person, you probably don't need a full Notion account to go through the PBL, but you will need some recognition, right? But Hinson is building out a thing in Hong Kong. He needs as much support as we can possibly give him, and yeah, that I think would be a great use of our collective pool. And I think it's a great way to sort of, because again, it's sort of getting people into the habit of making proposals and doing the, doing this work that shows that they can do. I don't know, there's good things in that. Yeah, those are my thoughts.
Ken's has a question in the chat. Are proposals posted to Notion? If so, how do you do that? So anybody without a paid account is still going to be able to access a page publicly, just like you guys can see this page publicly. And what we'll be able to do is make templates that allow for editing by people who do not yet have accounts. And that'll give you the ability to play with. You still have to make an account with your email address, right? To edit, right? So you'll have, that's on people to sign up, but then to get the benefits of, and again, don't take my word for it, that you still need the free accounts. But there are benefits to having the paid ones. That's long story short. Okay, that's what we've seen. If we find out that people can do everything they need to do without paid accounts, that's fine. But like I said, that adds a lot of administrative overhead, and that's exactly what we're trying to pay a little bit of money to avoid. Right? I'm basically trying to buy back some hours by paying for accounts instead of doing all that work of trying to get by with free versions of things.
I'm mindful of the time. We're getting towards the top of the hour. Yeah.
True that. Okay, so obviously we have not made a final decision on this, but I've got some good stuff here that I can now refine this proposal, and I'll post an updated version of this in Discord by early next week, so people have a chance to review it. And next week, we could choose to spend as much time as we want getting to consent on this. But I would love, like we did with Discord, to try to minimize that amount of time, make a decision, and start to move with it. Okay, but I know that we don't have time to get that consent at this minute because we're running out of time.
I think I could also join the experiment. I will try to write the proposal to request for an account. Probably I will need it because, so just by the next week, maybe we could also demonstrate a bit or talk about a bit. Yeah.
That's a really
how
good
we request for an account. Yeah.
I'll do the same thing. That's a great idea. I'm going to write a proposal for myself because I am facing blockers. So I would like to request one of these for myself personally. And so what I will do is I will write a project proposal for upgrading Plutus PBL to the 2024 version. And we can use that as an example. And that maybe that's my admission ticket to getting one of these accounts. And so Hinson, if you do the same, then we'll have a space to, and then we can decide whether to implement those.
Let's do it.
Awesome.
I've got a couple of proposals all right, about stuff I've already talked about. So,
Yep. And we talked about, right, that song of significance quote, do the reading, right? When people write proposals, people got to read them. Do the writing, do the reading. Chris, what do you say?
Yes, I have a question. I'm not familiar with Notion. So yesterday when I went to when you shared the link, I was able to get into the proposal and read it and everything. But today, when I click on the link, it doesn't allow me without like creating an account or I have another option to continue with the email and password. Is something
Right.
changed? I don't know.
I don't know. This link right here should be visible to everybody. I just put it in the chat.
Let me
Can
try.
you read the link in your web browser if you open that up?
Yes,
I
now
think
it works. It works now. I don't know. The previous
Okay.
one
yeah.
you shared didn't work. So this
Okay.
one, yes. Thank you.
Perfect. And then you see how allow commenting is turned on right here? This means that people can comment, but in order to comment, like you can see right here, they have to be logged in. So if anybody wanted to leave a comment from a public perspective, that's where you would have to sign up for a free account in order to be able to do that. And we can document this. Once we have a place like this to write documents, then some of the public documents we share can be how to get started and start to use these things. So that would be an early responsibility. And that's what the education circle, I'm proposing to use some education circle time to educate the rest of the group here on just how to use this system. All right. We're working on a proposal here. We're building habits, and we've talked a lot about moving slow to move fast over in the Andamio team. This proposal process, it's slow at first, but it becomes a habit and it starts to speed up. And I think that's what we have the opportunity to do here. So we've done the slow work here because we recognize this is going to get us to a point of moving fast sooner than later. So thanks for engaging in it, everybody.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
All
Sounds
right, all
good.
right. Till next
Thank you.
time,
Listen, guys.
enjoy the day, everybody.
Bye. Have a
Be
good
safe.
weekend. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye-bye.